Good morning, one and all. Hey, it's John. And thank you for the input on the idea of doing a live stream. I'm going to start scheduling that today, so you'll start to see it on the page as upcoming. It will be next Wednesday, 9 o'clock my time. And at some point, we may move it back to 10 my time because I know I'm on the East Coast and it'd be better to 10 would split it with the rest of the country. But this morning, I want to talk about a message that came in, and I think it's going to be a lot to unpack in this message. But I think it's really important. I think it's one of those ones where we're going to dive into some stuff, and I think for me, I want you guys to also realize that this is my perspective. This is I'm drawing this from my experiences, my intuition. And if you don't agree, I completely understand, and I am completely with you. And as I've always said, spirituality, personal journey. You have to take your beliefs and figure out what your beliefs are. I was blessed. My mom when I was 18, told me spirituality is a personal journey and gave me the opportunity to go explore what I believed. And I think everyone should explore what they believe and find out what's true to their heart and live what's true to their heart. And then the only thing I would say is if what's true to your heart is judgmental, hurtful, or angry, then I would look at that and say, is that the life you want to live? Do you want to be judgmental, hurtful, or angry? And remember the old saying, judge not, lest ye shall be judged. And if you think about that statement in a very specific way, judge not, lest you judge yourself as judgmental. So think about that one for a second. That's a little twister. So I want to read this whole thing. She responded to the live stream. She said, great idea. Maybe an idea to address is grief and fear. Why did Jesus have to die a horrific death? It always seems strange to me that Jesus died for our sins, quote unquote. Why? ? I never really understood how one person's excruciating death was redeeming for others. I wonder, why do humans have to die tragically at all? Babies, children's innocence. Why so much hurt? Is it any wonder we feel fear when we feel gut-wrenching grief? We fear the pain of loss. How does one grapple with the knowledge that tragic events can happen in our lives at any moment? I suppose I'm asking, what is the lesson of loss? You're actually, there's a bunch in here that's more than just the lesson of loss. There's a really, the reason I was so excited about this question and this series of questions, really, was because there is so much to unpack in here, and it all ties together. Let's start with the first one. Why did Jesus have to die a horrific death? He didn't have to. He didn't have to. And the next thing is, it always seems strange that Jesus died for our sins. What are sins? See, here's where we get into some really esoteric, thought-provoking stuff. What is sin? Sin is a transgression. What's a transgression? Well, if God is love and we're experiencing love, it's a transgression from love. Now, what is a transgression from love? The opposite of love is fear. And oftentimes people will tell me the opposite of love is hate. Hate is a product of fear. You hate because of your fear of something. So the opposite of love is fear. So your transgression from love, from God, is fear. And so your sin is fear. So just take the definition of the word sin and look at it for what it is. It's us creating fearfully. That's all sin really is, if you really look at it that way. Because it's against God. God is love, right? It's the opposite of love. Why did Jesus have to die a horrific death? He didn't have to. But he did choose to always speak his truth, to always speak the lessons, to always speak what he knew to be true. And what he died for was our fear. The fear of the masses, the fear of the controlling powers not having control. Because if you tell the masses that they are the creators of their experience. The people who are in charge and controlling that experience are going to see you as a threat because you're empowering the people to basically not listen to authority. So he died for our fears, right? That is an interesting thing. Now, what happens is over the course of time, over thousands of years, more and more gets added to the ideas, not just the words, not more words added into the text, but the concepts grow as well. To explain what I mean, what I just said is very simple. He died because people were fearful of him, and so they killed him. That's basically what I just said. Over time, it's become this: he has died for our sins, and it says that there's this big esoteric, energetic shift where energy, he balanced the scales of the earthly energies and all these things. It's not that complex. It really isn't, in my opinion. It's not that complex. He died for our transgressions from love. He died because we were fearful of the truth. And I say we, humanity, the people around, and he died because people were afraid. That's why he died. Now let's go to the next part of this, because I think it's wonderful. Why do I don't think it's wonderful per se. It's really bad wording for what I'm about to say. Why do humans have to die tragically at all? Babies, children's innocence. I have an idea of this. I have an intuition about this. Of course, I don't know for sure because I'm John Davis and I'm here and I'm whatever, but these are my intuitions on this. We are here to experience fear and loss. We are here to experience negativity because you can't know love or positivity without experiencing the negativity. Now, many people believe they choose the experience that they're coming into. They choose the experience they're coming into. And if they're choosing the experience they're coming into, that means they know what the experience is when they're coming into it. They want to experience something. Now, a lot of people have said that they believe that's true, or they've had channelings or psychics who've told them that, or they've had near-death experiences where they've had. There's one gentleman who remembers being on the other side and choosing the life. So what's interesting is that why would you choose a life that ends so tragically? Well, that means that you believe that everything's random. And what I believe is we are creators of our experience. And if we come into this world to experience something, as they say, like I say, I don't know if that's true or not, but if they say that, if you're coming into this world to experience something, then it can't be random because you're the one creating the experience, right? People often ask me about, babies, children, and innocence, abortion. I plan on doing a larger conversation about abortion at some point. I figured I would let my two controversial videos go away for a little while, my Lord's Prayer and my painting of Jeshua. I'll take a little break before I get into the real controversial stuff, but it's coming. Don't you worry. Babies, children, and innocence. So if we choose our experience coming here, then those tragic deaths happen. Now, picture this. Each one of those parents, each one of those family members, each one of those people who love those people, those children, is also having that experience. And they're experiencing the fear of that loss, right? Now, we're going to get into this fear of loss. And so sometimes, like I said, if you want to experience love fully, you have to experience the opposite. And so the deaths of these innocents, who it seems so tragic, it seems so pointless, right? But if you think about it from the aspect of the more pointless, the more tragic, the greater the contrast between love and fear. And so that is really a gift to the people who were left behind. Grief. Now here's we get into some really interesting stuff. Why so much hurt? Is any wonder we feel? She said, why so much hurt? Is it any wonder we feel fear when we feel gut-wrenching grief? We fear the pain of loss. How does one grapple with the knowledge that tragic events can happen in our lives at any moment? Okay, let's back up, because I'm going to leave that sentence for the next piece. Why so much hurt? Is it any wonder we feel fear when we feel gut-wrenching grief? Okay, now we've talked about, in all my videos, I talk about love and fear, right? And why so much hurt? Is it any wonder we feel fear when we feel gut-wrenching grief? What is grief? Grief is the fear of not having the person's love who's crossed over. You've loved somebody and it's gone. You're now experiencing complete separation from their love in this world, right? And what's happening now is, in this time, we are shifting into a whole new world right now. We are shifting into a whole more loving world. And what's happening is people are starting to experience the love from people who've crossed over in the here and now. When I do sessions, when I meditate, I feel Jeshua come into me. I feel him in the very presence here, right? When I sit there and I work on something funny, I turn, and right next to my chair where I write is a picture of my mother. And it was a picture that I took many years ago. And I was typing, and every so often I'll just look over, and she's sitting there with this smile on her face. And I feel her presence when I see her. I feel her consciousness when I see her. And so the veil is getting thinner. We're getting to a point where we're starting to feel them on the other side. So the idea is changing of that separation from that love. So the world is becoming more loving. We just have to realize that all of these anomalies of fear and anxiety that are showing up in the world around us are because they are bubbling up so they can be cleared out. We feel fear. The interesting thing about grief is, and I've in my life and in my former work, I did a lot of grief counseling, and it's interesting because there's the polarities of positive and negative, love and fear. And I used to tell people, I'd say, did you love them? And they would say yes. And I'd say, so if this was their life, how much of this, do you remember as positive? And they would say, well, most of it. I said, yeah, that's right. This grief right now is this little tiny piece at the end. This little tiny piece at the end. Do you think they would want you to remember them for this little tiny piece at the end, or for the whole part of their life, the whole essence of who they are? And they would go, well, of course they would want to remember it as to who they are, as opposed to this tragic little end, right? And then I say, so here's your life. When they think of you, do you think they're thinking of this moment of extreme grief for them not being here? Or do you think they think of you as the whole of your life? And I said, so the greatest thing you can do for those who've crossed over is be the person that they loved and knew you as. And the best thing you can do for them is remember them as the person you loved and you knew them as. That anomaly of the grief and the fear does not have to be the thing that defines them or you. And realize that love is eternal. And when they crossed over, they got to the other side, they haven't died. Death is not a thing. Death, earthly death, is just transition to another form of self, because our consciousness lives on. Our consciousness moves into another plane, another existence, and leaves the illusion behind. It leaves the illusion behind. I jokingly say, some people say to me, why is the universe expanding? I've had this question before. And my quick response was, because we keep looking further out. right? We keep looking further out and knowing that there's more and believing there's more. So everything expands, right? And so our thoughts are creating this experience. So the point of that is that our thoughts about grief and fear and anxiety are also creating our experience. And the moments of tragedy, the moments of grief and loss are necessary for us to know and experience love fully. And so they're hard to go through, and I know it's hard to go through. I mean, you're talking to someone who went through 3 tough divorces, and I learned so much from each one. And one of the things I learned from all of them, and one of the most valuable things that I encompass in my life now, is being fully me and loving me for me. Some people, get married, and when they get married, they first of all, when they meet the person, they change themselves to match them. Unconditional love. If you have to change, then the love is conditional. If you want unconditional love for you, you have to be you fully. And that, so love yourself first. And then don't worry about, and because if you're changing yourself, you are afraid of not having their love. So everything goes back to the fear of not being loved in some form. But that is the basis of our universe. That is the basis of our world. God is love, and we have our fear to experience love fully. In Sufism, they call it, they say that the God is on one side of a veil and we're on this side of the veil. And the veil, and our life is struggle against the veil, but the veil is our fear. That's exactly what's being said. Buddha says the secret to enlightenment is the eradication of fear. The way we release fear is to love and to be loved and to recognize love and loving. Live loving. There you go. So let me drop down here. How does one grapple with the knowledge that tragic events can happen in our lives at any moment? This is a huge, huge statement. That statement is living in the I will be moment. Let me say that again. That statement is living in the I will be moment. And a little bit in the I was moment, right? There have been tragic events that you've experienced in your past, and you're looking forward and saying there's going to be more, right? What's God's name again? God's name is I am. I am is the present moment. So this entire statement is not in the present moment. It is out of sync with God. It is out of sync with love. This concept of living your life afraid, fear, of what might happen, right? What is fear? Fear is negatively focused uncertainty. Fear is an emotional reaction to some future event that may or may not happen with you focused on a negative outcome. So why are you focused negatively? You're focused negatively because you're afraid, right? And the reason I say it's negatively focused on certainty is because if you were focused on something positive, you wouldn't be afraid. It's just negatively focused on certainty. Right? You need to exhale. Get very present. No matter what tragic events, you can mourn the loss. You can go through the process. That's fine. That's all part of life. But you must realize that when things happen, it's part of a larger picture, part of a larger creation, and it's an opportunity to experience love fully, because you can't know or experience anything without a baseline. That's what science tells us. And the baseline of love has to be the opposite, which is fear. So we are experiencing love. We are here to experience love through our fears. And grief is just the fear of not having someone's love or not having them in our life to love them. That's an expression of love that's been taken away from the physical form. So that's why we have fear and grief. And the interesting thing is we can sit here in this moment and look at fear and grief and loss and tragedy and get immersed in believing the world is that way. or we can get into the moment of going, I love that person. I'm sad that they're no longer here, but who they were as at the core was beautiful. And I know full well that they've crossed over and they are just as beautiful on the other side. And I know that they are there and they know that I'm here and they wouldn't want me to be in pain or suffer for their loss because they're not gone. They just can't communicate, or we can't communicate right now. It doesn't mean you won't ever be able to communicate. I mean, there are people in this world all the time who get messages, right? Those messages are communication from the other side. That feeling you get when you walk into a room and there's nobody there, but you know something's there, that's communication from the other side. When I was a young man, as you all know, I was Catholic, and being a young, dutiful Catholic boy, whenever there was snow, my mom would wake me up early, put me in a car and hand me a shovel, and I would shovel the church walks. And I remember one day that I was out there shoveling the church walks, and suddenly I thought of someone that I never thought of. Why would I think of that person? And then it was very much I had to stop, and I realized that I was feeling like as if he was there. Now I was a young kid. I was 15, something like that. When I was 15, I worked at a convenience store as a stock clerk and sometimes cashier. And we used to have a man who delivered milk to the store. His name was Hawk, H-O-C-K, Hawk. And a little short man, wore thick glasses, and was always very stern. He wasn't a jolly guy. He wasn't a jovial guy. He was a come in, get the job done, get the heck out, right? He was all business. But this day, shoveling that snow, Hawk showed up. Now, Hawk had died the year before. And so why did that happen? Because there was a communication. It was as if to tell me, I'm still around, right? Now, this is someone I had no real emotional connection to. This is someone that I never had a friendly bond with. This is just someone I knew as an acquaintance because he delivered milk to the store that I worked at. But he showed up because if you allow yourself to be open to the idea of communication, they will communicate. Now, here's the interesting thing about that. I often hear people talk about being in communication, and they say, well, before I do this, I have to sage and protect myself and do all these blah, 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 right? I say, why are you focused on the fear? Why are you focused on there being negatives? And in a future video, I'm going to talk about the word evil, because over the course of time, words have meaning, and those meanings grow and they become more powerful and esoteric, and evil is a very different thing than what most people think it is. But the world is far simpler, and it really comes down to being love, eradicating fear, and that's about it. It really is about it. Because the more loving you are, the more you change the world into a loving place. The more loving you are, the more you change your experience into a more loving place. And I'm sure many of you know people who you just think of them so fondly because they're so loving. Well, look at the world they've created. Look at the experience they've created within you, because just the mere thought of them makes you think loving thoughts. That is a gift, a blessing. And this amazing question that came in, I'm so happy. Thank you, whoever. I didn't write down the name because I decided that let's have the questions nameless because of the fact that it's somebody else might ask the same question, so it'll be for them as well. Thank you so much for this question, because to me, there's so much in it that we need to discuss. And we come back to this concept of love and fear. Love is huge as our one driving force, if we so choose, because we are the creator of our experience. We can focus on fear, or we can focus on love. If you focus on love, you're going to have a loving, joyful life. If you focus on fear, you're going to have a fearful life. And when tragedy strikes, realize that's an opportunity to experience love even fuller, because now you know what the opposite feels like. And sometimes in our life we have those moments where we are complacent, or we just get into a groove, right? And something has to shake us up to get us to think again. It has to shake us up to get us to experience again, because life is about motion. I want you to think about this. If water in nature are going downhill, right, that water that's in motion is teeming with life and oxygen. It's healthy water. But that same water, when it stops and becomes stagnant in a puddle, becomes poisonous, and bugs lay their eggs in it, and it becomes a nasty mire. Life is about motion. Life is about experience. Life is about a feeling and understanding. And you cannot feel, understand, and experience if you're stagnant. Grab life by the horns, as Robin Williams used to put it in all his movies, carpe diem, seize the day. Live this day, but live this day lovingly. Live it lovingly so that you can experience a life of love. And the world can experience it, because your job is not to change others. Your job is to make your part of the world loving. And the more of us that make our part of the world loving, it grows exponentially, because the more we brush up against people who experience this, they go, oh, who's that? And they start to feel good too. So it's like spreading love and positivity just by making your part of the world loving and positive. That's a big mission. Make your part of the world loving and positive. The other thing is, I see a lot of people who get into spiritual work get really daunted and really anxious because they feel like they've got big missions, and there is no big mission. Do the work just by loving. And if you're interested in something, go explore it, learn about it. Give yourself the loving experiences of going, wow, that interests me. Wow, that's really cool. I study all the time. I'm fascinated by the ancient texts and the modern texts, and Wayne Dyer, and I read everything and all the time. I watched anime with my son. I'm into sci-fi. I watch all the Marvel movies, and I'm not as much as a fan of the DC stuff, but the Zack Snyder cut, much better than the other one. But I don't limit myself. And I meet people who say, you watch those Marvel movies, and you know what this is? Judgment. This is them saying, well, what you're doing is not valid. They're belittling you because it's not what they like. So here's the interesting thing. It's not what they like. So if they're looking at you and you're liking something else, they're going to judge it harshly because they don't want to be wrong about it, not being cool. Right? So they want to judge it because they've created this little safe space, the velvet cage, as I would call it. They're very comfortable in there because they've created this space where they can go, okay, this is the way things are and everything else sucks, right? And this velvet cage. But they don't realize that all they have to do is open a door and they'll fly and experience flight, experience motion, experience the world, in a loving and carefree way. That is the way we live life. And as far as fear, anxiety, and grief, in some form, it's a blessing so that we can experience love fully. And those who have come here and have died, if they truly did choose their path, what a loving gesture to do, to come here and let us experience more of their love by not having it. So that is my deep thoughts by Jack Handy. Have a great day, guys, and I'll talk to you later. See ya. And we're looking at for the live stream next Wednesday at 9 o'clock Eastern time, and I will have that up real soon. Have a great day. See ya. Bye.